All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the October meeting of the Greenwich Representative Town Meeting. My name is Tom Byrne, RTM moderator. As everyone has received the call for tonight's meeting, the reading of the call will be omitted. Will everyone please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty, justice for all.
Thank you. As all members have received a copy of the minutes of our September meeting, the reading of the minutes will be omitted. I do have a number of corrections to the minutes, and this has to do with votes that were recorded at the September meeting. A number of them were incorrect, and I'm now going to correct this, and the minutes will reflect what the voting cards show. This is one of the problems we have with our remote platform with district tabulators sending in voting cards. I ask the district tabulators not to count the votes. Currently, the counts that are being placed on the cards are not correct in all instances, and that's misleading the ultimate tabulation. So just send in the copy of the voting card without any summary of the numbers, and our clerks will do the counting. All right, the first one is on page 14. This is the vote on the Legislative and Rules Committee motion that you see in the middle of the page there. In favor, 73. Against, 130. Abstentions, 4. That's 73, 130, and 4. The next one is on page 18. Bottom of the page, again, Legislative and Rules Committee motion. This was the exemption for seniors from the permit fee. In favor, 106. Opposed, 52. No abstentions. 106, 52, 0. On the next page, page 19, this is the Finance Committee motion on item 8. Those in favor, 48. Opposed, 110. No abstentions. None of these votes change the outcome, but there are changes to be made. All right, the next one is on page 24. This is the vote on item 9 as amended. The only difference here is there was only one abstention, not two. So 158, 2, and 1 abstention. And on the last page, this is on the labor contract motion postpone indefinitely, item 16. Those in favor, 143. Opposed, 12. Abstaining, 2. I want to thank Michael Spilo for finding those discrepancies. All right, are there any other suggested changes to our September minutes? Hearing none, the minutes as amended stand adopted upon unanimous consent. All right. Are there any preliminaries? Anybody had requested? I don't recall that there were any. All right, that brings us to the call of tonight's meeting. I did inform our district and committee chairs that based upon the reports received, I will recommend the following organization of our call tonight. I will designate items 6, 7, and 9 for our consent calendar. I will recommend that we suspend the rules and combine for voting purposes items 4, 5, and 8. Those are all appointments where the candidates were unable to meet with all of the reviewing committees. And so those will be subject to a motion to postpone to our December meeting. And that would leave to consider separately items 1, 2, 3, 10, and 11. So at this time, pursuant to our rules, I will designate the following 3 items for our consent calendar. If they remain on the consent calendar, all that you will hear tonight is what I'm about to say about each, as we do not receive committee reports or have discussion on consent calendar items. So at this time, I will designate item 6 for the consent calendar. This is a resolution appointing Tracy Friedman to be a regular member of the Board of Parks and Recreation with a term expiring June 30, 2024. Item 7 is a resolution appointing Catherine Tabner to be a regular member of the Nathaniel Witherell Board for a term expiring June 30, 2024. And item number 9 is a resolution appointing Eric Ivester to be an alternate member of the Planning and Zoning Board of Appeals with a term expiring October 31, 2025. Is there any objection to the designation of those 3 items for our consent calendar? Hearing none, will the district tabulators please mark your voting cards, consent calendar items 6, 7, and 9, and proceed to poll your delegation. Pursuant to our practice, we will allow a 5-minute period to conduct the vote. All right, we are prepared to move on. That vote is still in progress. We will report it to you when we have the totals. All right. At this point, I will recommend a motion to suspend the rules for the purpose of taking one vote on items 4, 5, and 8, which are all appointment resolutions where the candidates were unable to meet with all of our committees. Bob McKnight, Chair of our Appointments Committee.
Okay, item number 4, resolve Norma Curlin, nominated by the Board of Selectmen, be appointed a regular member of the Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Agency, R6, for a term expiring 10/31. I'll make a motion.
Why don't you read them all,
Okay.
3 of us, and
Item number 5, resolve Peter H. Linderhoff, nominated by the Board of Selectmen, be appointed a regular member of the Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Agency, R4, for a term expiring 10/31. 25. And item number 8, resolve Matthew Bernard, nominated by the Board of Selectmen, be appointed an alternate member of the Historic District Commission, R4, A4, for a term expiring 10/31/26.
thank you. Will a member please move the adoption of those 3 resolutions? It's been moved and seconded to take up those 3 items. Mr. McKnight, you're going to offer a motion to postpone on behalf of the committees that were interested.
Yes, due to non-shows that the Appointments Committee and the Land Use Committee now propose that we postpone these nominations to the December meeting.
All right, that's a motion offered on behalf of our Appointments Committee. It does not require a second. I see Mr. Berg here. Did you care to make a report, Mr. Berg?
Evening, Mr. Moderator. The Land Use Committee voted to postpone Ms. Curlin to our December meeting. We did interview Mr. Linderoth and the other gentleman, but Ms. Curlin could not attend.
Right. So the first 2 items, 4 and 5, the motion to postpone was made by our Appointments Committee. Item 8, it was by Land Use, but for convenience, Mr. McKnight made the motion governing all 3. All right. Is there any objection to the motion to postpone items 4, 5, and 8. We can adopt a motion to postpone upon unanimous consent. Is there any objection? Hearing none, the motion to postpone items 4, 5, and 8 may be adopted upon unanimous consent. That now brings us to the first of the remaining 5 items that we will take up separately, and that is item number 1. This was before us in September for a first reading. It is now before us for a second reading. This is a proposed amendment to the waste ordinance. And at this point, I will call upon the committees that consider this. Michael Basham, Chair of our Finance Committee. Okay.
Oh,
Michael Basham.
he can speak.
Mr. Basham, do you have a report? You have to unmute yourself if you do.
Yes, Mr. Moderator, I just saw the sign that popped up on my screen. Thank you. The Finance Committee took up this item for its second read. I noted that the language in section 9.5 of the ordinance was still not clear that annual permit holders would pay all other disposal fees as appropriate, as specified for those who are paying the $10 per visit entry fee. Motion was then made and seconded to delete the last sentence of paragraph 4 and insert the following language as a new paragraph 5. All other disposal fees shall apply as appropriate to any town residents entering the town disposal area via an annual permit or a single entry permit. This language clarifies all residents entering Holly Hill via any permit will be required to pay all appropriate disposal fees. The committee voted 12-0 to approve the amendment. I will propose this amendment at the appropriate time. A motion was then made to reinstate the $25 permit fee for seniors. There were concerns expressed about the lost revenue and that also the fee was an insignificant amount compared to retaining a licensed hauler. There was also some concerns that it might be difficult to administer unless all family members were over the age of 65. The committee voted 10-1-1 to approve this amendment. Since it is being proposed by other committees, we will not be presenting it to the RTM. District 3 voted no because the $25 fee does not adequately cover the cost of residents dropping off MSW. District 11 abstained due to concerns that this might establish a precedent for raising other senior fees in town for things like beach and golf passes. It was noted that citizens benefit from these other discounts because there is no additional cost imposed on the town for their use, whereas dropping off MSW at Holly Hill resulted in the town incurring additional disposal costs. A motion was made and seconded to approve the item as amended, and the committee voted 11-0-1 to approve the item as it was amended. District 8 abstained on this because the ordinance change being proposed does nothing to solve the bigger issues of reducing the amount of MSW produced in the town. Thank you.
Thank you. Kip Bergweger, Chair of our Legislative and Rules Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Legislative and Rules met last Monday evening. We were helped by Department of Public Works Commissioner Amy Siebert and Assistant Town Attorney Amina Ahmad. We had considered this last month, and we only dealt with proposed amendments. There were 3 amendments that were offered. The first was to amend section 9-1 by adding a new paragraph 7 following current paragraph 7 and inserting in paragraph 8 in which it defined a—
Mr. Bergweger, can you mute whoever? What? Oh. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I'm not sure how to mute it, but that happened to— I have sent this this language to the town clerk. I don't know if you want to put on a separate screen, or should I just read it as it is now and then wait till we make the motion itself?
Yes, go ahead, do that.
The new paragraph is non-passenger vehicle shall mean a commercial or combination vehicle as identified on its license plate or registration, or a vehicle designed to carry cargo, parentheses, e.g. a dump truck, rack body truck, box truck, cargo van, trailer, flatbed, etc., close parent, or any vehicle with a trailer, or any vehicle contracted to transport material to the town disposal area. It shall not include passenger vehicles, open parent, e.g. cars, motorcycles, SUVs, minivans, full-size passenger vans, and pickup trucks, close parent, no matter the seating configuration unless it meets one of the other criteria listed in this definition. The next three paragraphs were renumbered from 8, 9, 10 to 9, 10, and 11. We then had a debate on this proposal. It was proposed by Mr. Brian Rainey, who said that his neighbors hauling waste after Storm Ida had used personal pickup trucks and a Kia Soul wagon, but they were asked to go over the scales to pay by weight. He felt this was unfair. Commissioner Siebert pointed out that this amendment poses a problem. Contractors game the system by hauling in small, non-commercial labeled vehicles, and the Holly Hill staff know who is a regular abuser and who is abusing the system. The Holly Hill staff then force the abusers to go over the scales in order to have their construction debris and other items weighed, even though the vehicles they are hauling in are not labeled commercial vehicles. Commissioner Siebert noted that the amendment would likely interfere with these accepted practices and preclude staff from being able to charge these contractors who were abusing the Holly Hill rules. Some other members of the committee felt the system works fine as is and needs no amending. Others felt that forcing personal wagons, pickups to be weighed as a back way door to achieve pay-as-you-throw pricing, which we had earlier rejected. The committee voted 8-3-1 in favor of the amendment, with districts 3, 4, and 8 voting no. We then had a second amendment. The second amendment was to amend section 9-5, which in the second paragraph. Now, at the September meeting, this amendment was made in other paragraphs in section 9.5, and this is just conforming this paragraph to the other changes. And it'll read like this. It's actually the last sentence is changed to read, the amount of such tipping fee and the amendment of a payment shall be established by, delete the commissioner, insert the Board of Selectmen, after consultation with, insert the commissioner, and delete approval by and delete the Board of Selectmen, so that it reads that it will be established by the Board of Selectmen after consultation with the commissioner. Committee voted in favor of this amendment 11-0-0. Then the third motion was to amend section 9.5 in the fourth paragraph to read as follows. Town residents without a permit who wish to directly dispose of any material at the town disposal area shall be subject to an entry fee of, delete $10, insert $25 for each time they wish to enter the town disposal area. All other disposal fees will apply as appropriate. Then insert a receipt for this entry fee may be applied as a credit in the same amount toward the annual permit fee for the same year. That's the end of the changes. Commissioner Siebert explained that the $10 fee is charged for access for people who do not have an annual permit and is designed to apply for residents who don't want an annual permit, who maybe come once a year or arrive unprepared without their permit. And it gives them a chance to dispose of their material at one-time basis so they can have access and not be turned away. Giving credit for the entry fee is too complex because the systems to collect fees at Holly Hill are not connected to the licensing fee system, which is run out of town hall. The DPW would need to figure out how to administer this program, and Commissioner Siebert was not sure how they would be able to do it. It was also pointed out by a committee member that the DPW has bigger items to work on. This is a minor detail which would divert them from more important work. The vote in favor of this amendment was 6-4-1, with districts 2, 3, 6, and 10 voting no, and district 1 abstaining. The committee then voted on item 1 as amended, legal order 1100, on the merits 8-2-1, with districts 1 and 4 voting no, and district 3 abstaining.
All right. Is it true that Commissioner Siebert is not on this, in this meeting? All right,
She's here.
she is here? Okay,
Allow her to talk.
pardon me?
Oh, should I promote it?
No, I heard that she had addressed the committee and had advocated against things they are now proposing, and I was hoping that we would be able to hear from her before we took a vote. All right, so she is here, that's good. We have one more report.
She's raising her hand.
Well, Commissioner Siebert, thank you for being here. We're not having discussion at this point. I'm not calling for any vote. If you weren't here, I was going to try and make arrangements to get you here, but I don't need to do that. So let's finish with the committee reports, and then we'll take up the motions that are being offered in order that they appear in the ordinance. So Michael Spilo, Chair of our Public Works Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. As a reminder, at the September meeting, your Public Works Committee voted 3-9-0 against this item. I mention this because many of our objections are still the same. At the September meeting, we noted that the tipping fee resulted in a 30% reduction in municipal solid waste, and that we therefore approved removing the sunset clause, which is still a part of this item, though this may not be apparent from the October explanos. Many of the other objections to the rest of the item stand. As we did in September with respect to the rest of the item excluding the sunset, we discussed that these fees and policies are already in effect and posted on the town website, and thus clearly did not require this ordinance to be implemented. We also note that section 151 of the town charter already empowers the commissioner to exercise supervision and control over waste disposal and collection. The charter also requires that the commissioner who reports to the selectmen make any operational changes in consultation with the selectmen. As a result, the reason for our 3-9 vote in September, as well as our current vote, was that with the exception of the sunset clause, many of the provisions and proposed changes to the ordinance are redundant to the town charter and not needed. I apologize if my September report failed to make this issue clear. However, we were surprised by the changes or lack thereof proposed by the Legislative and Rules Committee and the general disregard for the town charter and operation of our town utilities. As an example, it's not clear what the commissioner can do with the new language of develop, operate, and administer, and enforce that was not possible under the existing language of supervision and control, which is in the charter, nor how the commission could change fees without the selectmen to whom she currently reports. That said, the committee voted 6-6-0 not to remove the last paragraph of section 9.5, with those voting to keep that provision, feeling that the clarification was needed given the confusion in the other provisions. We also took up discussion of the fees for the senior residents and the $10 fee for single access. We briefly discussed the issue of vehicle types. One of our members said they owned a pickup truck, which they often used to bring their personal recyclables and yard waste to Holly Hill, especially when these were not bagged. Others said that vehicle styles were constantly changing. Commissioner Siebert explained that the current policy looks at whether the rear seat is folded down, which is easier to implement than judging vehicle styles. We then discussed the exemption for seniors. We noted that the RTM voted to implement the $25 annual fee as a cap at the request of Legislative and Rules in the April 2020 meeting. At that time, the fee was presented as negligible. The $25 fee was presented as negligible and more tolerable than $75 per year. We therefore questioned at our last meeting why Legislative and Rules are making the request to exempt seniors and why this was not part of the original proposal in 2020. We also noted that the motion to exempt seniors passed at the abbreviated session on Tuesday without much discussion and only 106 votes. Several members of our committee who take their own trash to the dump and who would qualify for the exemption noted that $25 was a negligible amount. One member noted that seniors deserve our respect and that the fee waiver was a way to show our respect for seniors in our community. We discussed the number of seniors in the town and were told this was about 17% of residents, but the permits are per household and can be used in multiple vehicles, and we did not have an estimate on the number of households with at least one senior. We also discussed town policy regarding park passes, which are free to seniors, except at the Griff and the ferries. And we noted that the beach and park passes are $40 per individual and do not allow other household members free access. Commissioner Siebert indicated that a system for tracking seniors would need to be implemented at DPW, which does not currently have such a system. Ms. Siebert also indicated that Holly Hill passes are annual and that she assumed exemptions would apply to anyone who turned 65 during the year, but this was not clear in the ordinance. Commissioner Siebert also indicated that if we pass the motion mid-year, there would need to be a decision on whether refunds or would prorate or be offered at all for the current year. DPW also does not have a system in place for issuing cash or checks, nor for tracking refunds to prevent duplicate requests. We passed a motion to amend removing the exemption for seniors. Our vote was 6-5-1. Those voting no felt the exemption was in line with the parks policy for individuals and that seniors deserve our respect. District 3 abstained as a senior who felt uncomfortable voting themselves a $25 exemption. The motion to add mean testing to the exemption was withdrawn at this point. We then took a vote on the item on the merits. This item failed 4-7-1 with D3 abstaining again due to the senior fee. Those voting against the item felt again that they wished to send the message that the item was poorly drafted and many of the changes, with the exception of the removal of the sunset, were redundant or unnecessary. The language was confusing and conflicting with respect to the town charter. We request that in the future, our LNR members look more closely at the relevant charter sections. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, do I understand District 3 plans to offer a motion to postpone? And would District 3 like to make a report at this point? Oh, all right, hold on. So that'll be after the report from Lucia Jansen, Chair of our Budget Overview Committee.
Good evening. Last month, when the RTM met for 2 nights consecutively, many BOC members, including myself, were unable to attend. We missed the waste ordinance first read amendment vote to exempt senior citizens from the $25 permit fee. Hence, it was at our October meeting 2 weeks ago where we discussed the LNR motion. It was noted that prior to the RTM vote, there was no RTM committee analysis of LNR's proposal, since an LNR committee took place after the BOC meeting and on the same night as Finance and Public Works. Your Budget Overview Committee was puzzled with the proposal, since 1, the RTM had deliberated extensively a higher permit fee of $75 and rejected the idea, voting to lower it to $25 precisely to keep the permit fee affordable for senior citizens. Further, no BOC member on the committee had heard from senior citizen constituents, with no complaints of hardship or undue burden with the $25 charge. There was also no media or letters to the editor with opposition. Sales of the permits have been a huge success at nearly 8,000 permits when 2,500 was projected. In the explanos, it details the First Selectman's Waste Committee 3 options. None of those 3 options had an exemption of no charge to senior citizens. The closest that came was a $25 permit exemption for the seniors in combination with pay-as-you-throw, so that instead of a flat $25 unlimited access to Holly Hill, a senior would now be paying per bag every visit full of trash. So there was a link between a waiver of the permit fee and pay-as-you-throw proposal. As we all know, this body has repeatedly discussed and voted on pay-as-you-throw, and the vote May 11, 2020 was 198-17-5. The BOC has noted several times publicly that single stream recycling is a problem at the local, at the state, and at the national level. It is not just a Greenwich problem. Because of this, there are rising costs in all municipalities for single stream recycling. Just to remind you, recycling is a state mandate, single stream recycling is not. There was this discussion of further exploration and solutions will need to be addressed. Those presentations on the cost of that were presented in the report, the Waste Committee report, only included the tipping costs. It did not include the cost of running Holly Hill Transfer Station, which is with personnel, including fringe benefits. So there is an additional cost of $2.5 to $3 million that the tipping fee nor the permit fee cover. It is standard for municipalities, and indeed in surveys after surveys, people do respond, residents do respond, that there should be a portion that the town pays for garbage collection. There was a lot of discussion about cheaters and people who are deceptively gaming the system. The BOC was a little uncomfortable with this, and in fact, we did address it with a specific question: what kind of data, what kind of pictures, what kind of report do we have on this, so that it's not anecdotal accusations, but rather a full analysis? And there is none. So we would like to say, regardless of the outcome tonight, that if this returns in any way, that we come back with some data as to these kind of aspersions being made. There was discussion on the means testing, which was referred to earlier, but that would be a very complicated process to implement. The BOC did make a motion, which we will offer later. We did not take a vote on the total item because after our BOC meeting, there were many committees that were going to make amendments. Thank you.
Adam Rothman, Chair of District 3, do you care to report at this point?
Yes, District 3 is requesting that we postpone this item to the December meeting. There are an awful lot of unknowns, and basically just an awful lot of unknowns in this proposal. And so that's what we're making a motion to do.
All right. Well, we have heard all of the motions to amend that our committees will suggest. The motion to postpone does have priority over motions to amend. So at this point, we will take up that motion to postpone. So Mr. Rothman, would you care to present it formally now?
Yeah, District 3 makes a motion to postpone this until the December meeting.
All right, that being offered on behalf of one of our districts, it does not require a second. Discussion on the District 3 motion to postpone. Let me just check and see if we have. All right, we do have a sign up list on this. First speaker, well, first of all, I'll offer, I see we have our first selectman here, Fred Camillo. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. If you care to speak, just let me know. And any desire on this? All All right, Commissioner Siebert, do you care to speak on this motion to postpone? Commissioner?
No, thank you, Tom. No, I think it'll let it go ahead.
All right. Then our first speaker is Scott Kalb, to be followed by Lucia Jansen. Now we're speaking on the motion to postpone to the December meeting. Scott Kalb.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and good evening, everyone. My name is Scott Kalb, and I'm the Secretary of the First Selectmen's Waste Management Committee. I rise to support item 1, the Waste and Litter Ordinance, and to oppose this amendment to postpone until the December meeting of the RTM. By approving this ordinance, we help the Commissioner of the Department of Public Works and the staff at Holly Hill to operate flexibly while also ensuring safety and enforcement. This ordinance helps to put the Department of Public Works operations at Holly Hill on firm ground. The ordinance helps to close loopholes that currently exist, and it codifies existing practices at Holly Hill to make them more efficient and effective. The ordinance will help to save the town and residents money and help to eliminate free riding practices. The ordinance may not be perfect, but we should not let the perfect be the enemy of the good. The provisions in this ordinance are solid and helpful, and I think that we should get them on the books. Please vote against this amendment to postpone, and let's settle this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Lucia Jansen, to be followed by Brian Rainey.
I too rise to support voting against this motion to postpone. I believe that all the information has been presented. I do ask that you do consider, before we postpone, we take this vote on the $25 exemption for seniors. And thereafter, the rest of the language can be addressed at a different time. We all know that the RTM ordinances can be addressed at any time by our body. So if we feel that we need to amend or work on this any further, which we talked about, some of the studies we want to see and data in regards to those that perhaps are not paying their fair share, you know, there could be an opportunity to come back. But for now, we did fulfill the intent of this process, which was to confirm the tipping fee was fair. We debated the permit fee at the $75. We came up with the $25. I ask that you support the item as it came before us, including the $25 fee for all residents. Thank you.
We're only discussing the motion to postpone at the moment. All right, Brian Rainey, to be followed by Beth McGillivray.
Brian Rainey, thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'm not sure what postponing buys us. All of these amendments would still come back, possibly more amendments. Postponing isn't the right answer. Perhaps there is another solution there, but this is not it, I believe. Thank you.
Thank you. Beth McGillivray, to be followed by Dan Ozesmere.
Hi, Beth McGillivray. I am in favor of moving forward and not postponing this. I am also in favor of maintaining the $25 fee for all residents. Briefly, I've not heard any grumblings of upset constituents or hardships from seniors with a current $25 fee for seniors. When I was at the dump this Saturday, it was very busy. Many regulars were throwing their trash on their Saturday chores. We have moved from a free system to a seamlessly implementing a fee. It is relatively new and it's worked. I don't think it's time to tweak it. It has deferred some of our costs remarkably well. Let's keep well enough alone. I'm voting to support maintaining the existing fee for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Dan Ozesmere, to be followed by Michael Spilo.
Thank you. This is Dan Ogersmeer. I believe that Lucia and Scott and Beth eloquently, discussed the issues and made the case. I would urge us to get this done tonight and not defer it to December. I want to note this is a second read, and we also had a 10-month process with an RTM First Selectman Committee, and those were public meetings. Anyone could attend them. Anyone could provide comment. This is where we are. Let's move on. Thank you.
All right, Michael Spila.
Yes, I'd like to say that despite my committee report, I feel that we should move this forward. I would say this is lousy rather than good, but we should not spend any more time on this. Let's get it done tonight and not waste more time.
All right, that is the end of our speaker sign-up list. Will the district tabulators, I think we're gonna have to take a record vote on this. Will the district tabulators please mark your voting cards? District 3 motion to postpone item 1 to our December meeting. And if you want to put this off to December and not take a final vote tonight, you vote yes on this motion postpone. If you want to consider item 1 further tonight, you vote no. We'll allow 5 minutes for this vote. All right, I realize that we need the result of this vote, so we cannot continue, although the 5 minutes has expired. So I ask our district tabulators to try and expedite the voting here, and we'll just continue with the tonight's theme songs until we have the result. All right, we don't have the final vote, but based on what we do have, it's clear this is the motion to postpone is going to fail. So we are going to continue. When we have the final vote on the motion to postpone, I will report it, but we'll continue. First, let me report the vote on the consent calendar items. Those in favor, 194, opposed 0, abstaining 2. The consent calendar items 6, 7, and 9 have carried. All right, so let's go through the ordinance in the order in which these amendments appear. The first up will be the legislative and rules motion to amend section 9-1. And this is inserting a new paragraph 8. Mr. Bergweiger?
Yes, as I mentioned before, we have a motion to add a new definition of the term non-passenger vehicle by inserting a paragraph with a new number 8 following paragraph 7 and renumbering the following paragraphs to 9, 10, and 11. I did submit a copy of this. I don't know if it's available on a separate screen or not.
No, but
Okay.
I believe it was sent to all members, right?
Yes. So do I need to read this a second time, you think?
I'll read it a second time. All right,
Well, I'm happy to do it, Mr. Moderator. I just
go right ahead. So,
okay.
So this is what you are proposing to add to the ordinance.
Correct.
Ed.
Non-passenger vehicle shall mean a commercial or combination vehicle as identified on its license plate or registration, or a vehicle designed to carry cargo, parentheses, e.g. a dump truck, rack body truck, box truck, cargo van, trailer, flatbed, etc., close parent, or any vehicle with a trailer, or any vehicle contracted to transport material to the town disposal area. It shall not include passenger vehicles, open paragraph, e.g. motorcycles, cars, motorcycles, SUVs, minivans, full-size passenger vans, and pickup trucks, close parent, no matter the seating configuration, unless it meets one of the other criteria listed in this definition. That's it.
Thank you. All right, that is a motion to amend offered on behalf of the Legislative and Rules Committee. It does not require a second. We will now have discussion on this. Once again, I heard Mr. Bergweger report that the Public Works Commissioner had spoken about this proposed amendment. Commissioner Siebert, I'll give you the option of speaking now or last. Do you have a choice?
I'll be happy to go at the end. Thanks.
All right. All right, we do have a sign-up list on this. Scott Kalb is our first speaker, to be followed by Phil Dodson.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. My name is Scott Kalb. I'm from District 7, and as I stated before, Secretary of the First Selectmen's Waste Management Committee. I rise to oppose the amendment that has been proposed by LNR to add a paragraph to the ordinance specifying a definition of passenger vehicles. The proposed language is wrong-headed in my view, and rather than eliminate loopholes and certain kinds of abuse, it would actually create more loopholes to take advantage of. For example, the proposed amendment states that only vehicles with commercial or combination license plates could be subject to weighing at Holly Hill. Note that the state no longer issues combination plates, only commercial or regular plates. So the only way to determine if a vehicle is being used for combined non-commercial and commercial purposes would be to have it stop at the scale house. And this is not a workable solution. This amendment also exempts non-commercial pickup trucks from being weighed. That could encourage many to register their pickup trucks with regular plates rather than with commercial plates. We already have pickup trucks registered as non-commercial vehicles, even though they may be used for commercial purposes. Under the current ordinance, staff have the authority to ask that any pickup truck be weighed at Holly Hill if it's carrying debris, large loads of waste, etc. But if this language is passed, the town would lose that authority. Finally, the proposed amendment states that any passenger vehicle with non-commercial plates, no matter the seating configuration, would be exempted from being weighed. But this is the exact opposite of what we're trying to accomplish here. Currently, some vendors and residents are modifying passenger vehicles to transport cargo. For example, removing the seats, stuffing them with trash and debris, and then making multiple trips to Holly Hill to avoid paying fees. We have documented evidence of such vehicles being used to transport thousands of pounds of debris to Holly Hill. The ordinance would fix this loophole by classifying passenger vehicles that have been modified to transport cargo as non-passenger or commercial vehicles, and giving the staff the option to have such vehicles weighed. Please note that the ordinance would not require that all pickup trucks and modified passenger vehicles be weighed. Rather, it gives the staff the authority to use their discretion in weighing such vehicles if they believe the vehicles are overloaded. This amendment would take away that authority. In short, this proposed amendment widens loopholes and provides visitors with additional methods to dump trash and then stick the town with the bill. Please note that the Department of Public Works and managers of Holly Hill do not support this amendment. I advise everybody to vote to reject this amendment, and thank you for listening.
Thank you. Phil Dodson, to be followed by Brian Rainey.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. This legislative and rules motion inserts a new non-passenger vehicle definition into the ordinance that conflicts with the one DPW wants to use for enforcing disposal regulations. The Holly Hill staff has indicated they know who the regulars are that abuse the system. The ordinance that was originally presented in the call is designed to allow DPW to go after these individuals and force compliance. Holly Hill staff needs the authority to address these abusers so they can be weighed and pay proper fees, even though the vehicles they are hauling in are not labeled as commercial vehicles. The amended motion would interfere and prevent staff from being able to charge these contractors utilizing these non-commercial small vehicles to dispose of waste. As RTM members, it is not our job to create problems for our department heads and workers. I find it disturbing when Commissioner Siebert raises legitimate objections to this motion that a committee would pass it otherwise. I strongly urge my fellow members to vote no on this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Brian Rainey, to be followed by Michael Spilo.
Brian Rainey, thank you, Mr. Moderator. You know, I think Mr. Kalb and well, sorry, the previous speakers, I think, missed the point. The current rules, which are listed on the DPW website, actually conflict with the intention of the existing ordinance. In fact, they also conflict with the express written words of the existing ordinance. And what we are trying to do here is define a term in a different way than DPW would like to define it. Why? I don't believe we should be discriminating against pickup truck owners who have their pickup truck as a passenger vehicle that they drive around. I don't believe we should be monitoring whether there are one seat down in a minivan or not. There is a narrative that people are abusing the system. This abuse is based on a system created by DPW. This definition actually makes it easier and gives them the tools to address this, as opposed to what is frankly a haphazard amalgam in the current rules. What we are trying to do is discriminate between commercial and residential uses. They are including pickup trucks and cars with the seats down. That doesn't make sense for me. I don't think it makes sense for my neighbors. You know, if my neighbor with the Kia Soul needs to put the seats down and wants to make one trip rather than 4, I think that saves her time and saves money and is better for the environment. There is, one of the previous speakers mentioned documented abusers. We have not seen that documentation. We asked for that documentation and it has not been provided. I'm not sure it exists. So, pardon me while I look at my notes. I would rather err on the side of the resident and miss some revenue from these supposed scofflaws that exist that are gaming the system. And it just seemed like the right thing to do. And I would also like to point out that this is up to us, the RTM, not DPW. I'm pretty sure they can adapt to this rule. It's not particularly tough, in my opinion. Thank you.
All right, before calling upon Mr. Spilo, who is our next speaker, I do have the result of the vote on the District 3 motion to postpone item 1 to December. Those in favor, 39, opposed, 162, abstaining, 0. So that motion to postpone has failed. Michael Spilo speaking on the L&R motion to amend, to be followed by Commissioner Siebert.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I hate to agree with Mr. Kalb twice in one night, but I do think that we should not pass this motion to amend. However, I also agree with Mr. Rainey that there are some problems here. I think that the solution is to let DPW run with this for a year or more, collect the data about whatever abuse is or isn't going on, and then come back if they feel they need more input from the RTM. All of these amendments seem to be micromanaging the process, which I don't think is necessary.
Public Works Commissioner Amy Siebert.
Yes, good evening. Thank you. I guess I can save you all a little time. And I think Scott and Phil and Mike Spilo said everything for us for Public Works. What we're trying to do is maintain a process that we have that works for the vehicles we have going over the scale today. So we are suggesting that for operational effectiveness, that we would be able to continue to do that. And we're happy to continue the discussion with folks about what else we might adjust in future. We were not, so we're seeing here, we're not getting at the problem that DPW was trying to solve by this amendment. So it would not help us, it would hinder our operations. So I do hope that we can continue the conversation, leave it out, and go from there.
Thank you. All right, that is the end of our speaker list. I'll ask the district tabulators to mark your voting cards Eleanor, motion to amend section 9-1 of item number 1. If you are in favor of adding the definition that was read by Mr. Bergwegger, you should vote yes. If you are opposed to adding that definition, you should vote no. We will give a 5-minute period to conduct the voting. We don't need to await the result of this to take up the next motion to amend item 1. So 5 minutes on the clock. Thank you. Good to go? All right. So we'll bring that final vote to you when we have it. We can continue at this point with additional motions to amend item 1. The next one was legislative and rules motion to amend section 9-5, the second paragraph. If you recall, in September, we made changes 2, 3, 4 to the 5th paragraph and to the 6th paragraph, where we flipped who was making final decisions. And we made it the Board of Selectmen after consultation with the commissioner. So Mr. Bergwegger, I understand your next motion is just to conform to that model. Is that right?
That's exactly right, Mr. Moderator.
All right, so this is to amend the second paragraph. Why don't you just explain it one more time?
I'll read it. Each licensed waste collector transporting acceptable solid waste to the town disposal area shall pay a tipping fee on each ton of acceptable solid waste delivered by such licensed waste collector to the town disposal area. That's the way it reads now. Now the change comes in the next sentence. The amount of such tipping fee and the method of payment shall be established by the Board of Selectmen, delete the commissioner, after consultation with the commissioner, delete approval by the Board of Selectmen. So it's the Board of Selectmen who are set the amount of the tipping fee and the method of payment, and they will consult first with the commissioner.
All right, thank you. We can adopt a motion to amend upon unanimous consent. Is there any objection to making that change, which conforms with what we did in paragraphs 5 and 6 last month? Who? Well, they have to let me know. Our system was to alert the panelists who represent their district, and then they'll speak out as panelists. So when I ask for these questions, I'm not asking for a raised hand. I'm asking for a communication to go through the district representative who would then inform us. So is there any objection to adopting this particular motion to amend? Hearing none, that may be adopted upon unanimous consent. All right, the next one, it relates to the senior exemption for the permit fee. So this is this was offered by 2 committees, Public Works and BOC. Who would like? Well, we'll first call on Mr. Spilo to be followed by Lucia Jansen. Well, however, would you want to let whoever wants to offer it, go right ahead. I understand it's the same amendment, right? Yes. Go ahead, Mr. Spilo.
This is an amendment to delete the senior exemption from, $25 permit fee from section 9.5, paragraph 3.
All right, that motion to amend being offered on behalf. All right, so we do have a parliamentary issue on this. First, let's. So I have not yet accepted this motion. It doesn't require a second, but it must be accepted by the chair. The parliamentary situation is that in September, we amended item 1 on the first read to add this sentence, which provides an exemption to seniors 65 and over from paying the $25 permit fee. The vote on that was 106 to 52, more than a 2-to-1 margin. If this motion had been offered that same night, it would not have been in order. It is not in order to consider exactly the same issue that has already been decided by the body. The fact that this is a second meeting does not change that fact. However, there is a method to allow us to reverse what we did in September. The parliamentary devices are motion to rescind and motion to amend something previously adopted. So let me just read a couple of things to you out of Robert's rules. So this is section 39, dilatory and improper motions. And dilatory means two things, or can mean two things, one of which is a motion is dilatory if it seeks to thwart the will of the assembly as clearly indicated by the existing parliamentary situation. So we now have a situation where there is a motion that would have the effect of reversing something that we clearly decided in September by more than a 2-to-1 vote. So, you know, I understand people can change their minds, but we still have to abide by these rules. And this is 39, section 39, paragraph 5. Motions are not in order if they conflict with one or more motions previously adopted at any time and still in force. So that motion to amend was adopted in September. You see it's still in the ordinance on our call tonight. And the only way to take that up is to consider what was offered as a motion to amend something previously adopted, which has special rules. So, so that is the only circumstance that I will accept this motion. Is that that's acceptable to Mr. Spilo, who offered the motion to amend? All right, now the special vote on the on the motion to amend something previously adopted. I will read this to you. Section 35, paragraph, or 35, section 2, paragraph 7. The motion to amend something previously adopted requires either, and there are three possibilities, a 2/3 vote, a majority vote, simple majority vote, when notice of intent to make the motion has been given at the previous meeting or in the call of the present meeting. That condition is not satisfied, so a simple majority vote is not sufficient, or a vote of a majority of the entire membership, any one of which of those three will suffice. So for us, the only options on a motion to amend what we adopted in September would either be a 2/3 vote or a majority of the membership is 116 members. All right, so under those circumstances, I will accept that motion. And at this point, do you care to offer further reports? Lucia Jansen, Chair of our Budget Overview Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and thank you for that ruling. The BOC took this up, as I mentioned earlier in the report, due to the lack of discussion at the last RTM meeting. The BOC voted a strong 8-1 to amend the waste ordinance to restore the $25 fee for all residents. District 6 and 8 voted no because they wanted to exempt seniors from the $25 fee. District 12 abstained and wanted more time to consider the issue. Thank you.
Michael Spilo, Chair of the Public Works Committee.
So as I mentioned in the previous report, the reason we voted for this is that while initially it appears to be a de minimis change, won't impact things one way or the other very much, this does introduce some complications to the Department of Public Works, especially with regards to the current fiscal year. Would require some jumping through hoops to issue refunds, decide who gets refunds, how much refunds they get. In the end, this is a fee, not a individual fee. And since it applies to households, which may include non-seniors, it's just simpler, it seems, to leave this out other than have it in.
Mr. Basham, did you have anything further to add on behalf of Finance?
No, Mr. Moderator, thank you.
All right. So we do have speakers signed up on this motion to remove the senior exemption. Phil Dodson is our first speaker, to be followed by Brian Rainey.
Mr. Moderator, Mr. Zorthian's asking if I can ask you to move to question.
Well, we only have 7 speakers. Does Mr. Zorthian want to propose a motion to limit debate?
Hopefully he's listening.
So my practice is to allow those who took the time to sign up to speak. So I wouldn't accept the motion for the previous question. At this point, I would come to him after, if needed, after the speaker then called on. But I would accept a motion to limit debate at this point.
He said not necessary for 7, but if you'd like me to make the motion, I can do that. Can I do it for the rest of the night?
Okay. What's your motion?
Can we make a motion to limit debate from all speakers to 3 minutes?
Did I hear 2 minutes?
Did you hear 1 minute?
You can hear 2. 2 sounds good.
1?
That's what we did last month. Didn't
That's
work
fine.
so well, but it's better than 3. I'm
Okay.
sorry. So what is your motion?
Actually, I would like to limit debate to 2 minutes. I'm just trying to text with Greg and still talk, sorry.
All right.
Greg said 2 works for him.
All right. So this is per item, I presume. I'm sorry, per motion rather than per call.
Person.
Well, we have further motions to amend here.
Okay.
If someone, no, you tell me. I'll put before the body whatever you want. Is this to limit per call item 2 minutes or per motion that's brought up?
Per call item.
Okay. Is there a second? It has been moved. It has been moved and seconded to limit debate for the balance of the meeting to 2 minutes per speaker per call item. The motion to limit debate is not itself debatable, and it requires a 2/3 majority to pass. If you are in favor of imposing this limit, you should vote yes. I'm going to call for a raised hand vote in the first instance. If we need to take a record vote, we will do that. So all hands down, all those who are in favor of imposing a 2-minute limit per call item, please raise your hand now. I can't see it on that. What is it?
119.
Both the,
119.
all I want to know is raise.
So 119 was here. And then
Could you, Ms. Vulgaris, could you count in the room, please? That's both panelists and attendees.
yeah, well, now it's like, what's the number? Yeah. Your number is 125.
8 in here. All right, so we have a total of 133, both online and in person. So all hands down, please. Those who oppose this motion to limit debate, please raise your hand now. What is it? 23 and 4. All right. All right. So we have a total of 160 voting, and 2/3 of that is 106. So 133 to 27, that motion has carried. So for the balance of the evening, individuals may only speak for 2 minutes per call item. So if you signed up for something, you don't have, you can pass. If you signed up for multiple things, for example, I see the same names on all the following motions to amend item 1. So keep in mind what you want to speak on. So right now we are debating the motion to remove the exemption for seniors paying the $25 permit fee. So the first speaker I had was Phil Dodson, to be followed by Brian Rainey. Mr. Dodson, do you care to speak on this?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Moderator. When the Holly Hill permit fee was implemented, it was never intended to have seniors pay no fee at all. DPW in the town originally wanted to implement a $75 fee for everyone, while some suggested possible senior fees of $50 or $25. It was projected that possibly 2,400 permits would be sold the first year. Instead, over 5,500 permits were sold, and now this year, 7,800 permits have been sold. This makes selling 8,000 permits a real possibility for this fiscal year or the next. Because so many more permits are being sold, the program is successful in generating more revenue than originally anticipated. The purpose of the fee is to offset some of the increasing solid waste disposal costs. A senior fee exemption will add more time and effort for processing the applications that will have to include copies of driver's licenses or other ID proof of ages. This means a large number of permits will have to be issued with no money collected for all the time and effort required. This undermines the whole purpose of having the permit fee. I would also suggest that you may see a real flood of applications as a means to get free permits to also game the system for Holly Hill. It has been suggested that the number of senior permits would be about 15% of the permits issued. That's based on the percentage of residents age 65 and over. This would eliminate the fee for at least 1,200 permits. Since previous permit estimates have proven to be so wrong, I believe the number could be 2,000 or more. This is also because many of our seniors live in extended family households where a permit can be registered in the name of any senior. The senior doesn't have to be the driver of a household car entering Holly Hill. Larger family households.
Thank you, Mr. Dodson. Mr. Dodson, that's the 2-minute limit. All right, Brian Rainey to be followed by Scott Kalb. Mr. Rainey, do you care?
Brian Rainey passes.
All right, Scott Kalb to be followed by Michael Spilo. Mr. Kalb.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Moderator. Again, my name is Scott Kalb. I'm from District 7. I rise to support item 1, the waste and litter ordinance, and to oppose the amendment proposed by the BOC to remove the clause adopted in September by the RTM with a 2-to-1 margin, which states that senior residents would be exempt from permit fees. I have 2 reasons for supporting an exemption for seniors on permit fees. and neither of them have anything to do with pay-as-you-throw. First, I believe that exempting senior residents from the permit fee will have a very minor impact on our waste management budget. This year, the town has sold about 7,840 permits, let's call it 8,000. That generates approximately $200,000 of revenue. The Town Department of Public Works estimates that approximately 10 to 15% of all permits sold are to senior residents. If these permits are free, it would amount to a reduction in permit revenue of $20,000 to $30,000. This is less than 1% of the town waste management budget. It's just not a big deal. Second, seniors are not big generators of trash and are not the problem we face at Holly Hill. Last year, direct drop-off of trash, municipal solid waste, not recycling, at Holly Hill increased by 15% to 5,780 tons. It cost the town about $550,000 to dispose of this waste last year. Senior residents who may be throwing away a few bags of trash per month and may visit Holly Hill facility to recycle or dispose of food scraps or give to Goodwill are not the issue. Giving our seniors a break makes sense. It's consistent with town practice and it doesn't hurt the town. The real culprit are those few permit holders at Holly Hill that are using so-called passenger vehicles to bring in tons of trash without paying any fees and sticking the bill to our town. This is where we need to concentrate our efforts, not on our senior residents.
All
Please
right,
vote
thank you very
no and
much.
reject this amendment.
Mr. Spilo, do you care to speak? No. All right, Dan Ozesmere, be followed by Valerie Stouffer.
Yes, so this is Dan, thank you. I urge you to approve this amendment, which would eliminate the waiver. I think, well, first thing I will say is, as everyone said, there's no significant cash impact to both the town or to the residents. Based upon the fact that we expected 2,500 permit sales and we ended up with 8,000, I think the pricing is reasonable. And as we noted, we originally reduced the price from 75 to 25 to account for the concerns here. I would also note that for such a small program, we've heard from the Commissioner of Public Works that the implementation issues around this would be significant. I suggest that the RTM approve this amendment, move on, and in a year or two, if there are issues, they can take it up again. Thank you.
Thank you, Valerie Stouffer, to be followed by Carol Zarilli.
Yes, I'm Valerie Stafford, member of District 7 RTM, and I am a senior, and I have to admit that I quite enjoy the senior prerogatives of when there are special senior exemptions. However, in this case, the $25 to use the facilities at Holly Hill are a tremendous bargain. And I also believe that most seniors want to pay their fair share. I personally am cleaning out an attic. I'm going to have a lot of stuff to take, and I think I'm not the only senior who will be using the facilities. And I'm in favor of instituting the $25 fee, and I think most seniors would be. So please vote for that.
Thank you. Carol Zarilli.
Hi, Carol Zarilli. I'm all in favor of reinstating the $25 fee for seniors. I'm under 2 minutes. Thank you all.
All right. That is the end of our speaker sign up. Will the district tabulators please mark your voting cards? Motion to amend something previously adopted regarding the senior exemption for the $25 permit fee. Once again, if you are in favor of reinstating that fee for seniors, you should vote yes on this. So you're taking out the exemption that was adopted last month. If you want to do that, you vote yes. If you want to leave that exemption in, you vote no. And I simply remind the body that we need either a vote of 116 or more members or 2/3 of those present and voting. We do not count abstentions when making that 2/3 calculation. All right, we will allow the 5-minute voting period. All right. So that vote is still in progress. And I want to alert you that if that motion fails, meaning the senior exemption remains, Mr. Spilo has indicated a desire to offer a motion to amend by adding a starting date for the senior exemption so that there's no issue for the balance of this fiscal year. So he would propose starting July 1st that seniors be exempt. So there's not going to be any refund. There shouldn't be any refunds, et cetera. But we'll wait to see the result of the vote on this motion to take the exemption out before addressing that. So the next motion in order, this is a legislative and rules motion addressed to section 9-5, the 4th paragraph. Mr. Bergweger.
Mr. Moderator, before I get to that, could I ask, I didn't get the count of the first vote.
Yes, all right, so thank you. We do have the result of the vote on Eleanor's motion to add a vehicle description definition. Those in favor 16, opposed 183, abstaining 1. That has failed.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. This motion is to amend the 4th paragraph in section 9-5. It reads as follows: town residents without a permit who wish to directly dispose of any material at the town disposal area shall be subject to an entry fee of, delete $10, insert $25 for each time they wish to so enter the town disposal area. All other disposal fees will apply as appropriate. A receipt for, and then a new language, a receipt for this entry fee may be applied as a credit in the same amount toward the annual permit fee for the same year.
All right, that being offered on behalf of our Legislative and Rules Committee, it does not require a second and is now before us. We do, so we're changing, for those who don't have a permit, we're changing the entry fee from 10 to 25. And then that would be a credit if they wanted to use that to buy an annual permit. All right, so let's see. Our speakers who still have time. Brian Rainey, do you care to speak on this?
Yes, Mr. Moderator. Brian Rainey. So the idea behind this is simple. We want to drive adoption of the annual permit. So set the one-time fee to $25, allow them to get an application, take their receipt, mail them both back to DPW. They've already paid the fee and they will get their annual permit placard in the mail and we're done. And not particularly complicated. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you. Michael Spilo, do you care to speak on this? No. All right. So that's it on the speaker sign-up list for those who still have time. I will ask, is there any opposition? Some of those who used their time already were against it. So do we need to take a record vote on this? Yes. All right. Will the district tabulators, so we have.
Excuse me, Mr. Moderator?
Yes.
Would you care to hear from
yes, Commissioner Siebert? Yes, I would. Commissioner Siebert, do you care to speak on this?
Sure. Yeah, we basically what DPW said was the devil will be in the details on this when it came before us on Monday night. Not exactly sure how we would implement it. I know Mr. Rainey believes it's quite simple. We're not entirely sure we're there yet because our permit applications are all online at this point. We're trying to really emphasize that. And we had hoped to, again, capture the folks who might come down that one time, might not come back again, but prevent them from hopefully turning around and leaving us and dumping their things potentially the wrong way. $10 seemed like a simple way to do that. It'd be clean. They can still go get their $25 permit, but I guess we'll see where it all lands. And like we said, the devil will be in the details on implementation for this. So thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, we will take a vote. If you are in favor of making the changes that Mr. Bergweger described, increasing the fee to those without a permit to 25 and providing that as a credit to get an annual permit, you should vote yes on this motion to amend. If you want to leave the ordinance, this is fourth paragraph of section 9-5. You want to leave it as is, you vote no. Will the district chairs please mark your voting cards? Eleanor, motion to amend section 9-5, paragraph 4 of item 1, and proceed to pull your delegation. All right. We have the result of the vote on the motion to amend by taking out the senior exemption. Those in favor, 140, opposed 57, abstaining 1. So that has satisfied both criteria. It only had to satisfy one. 2/3 would have been 130 some odd. So that motion has carried, and that senior exemption has been removed. All right, we do not yet have the vote on that $25 fee change for those without a permit, but we will continue. Mr. Basham, Finance Committee has another motion, is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Moderator. In view of the impact of the prior vote on our proposed amendment, I'd like to wait till we get the results of that vote if I could.
All right, that is the last motion. So at this point, we do have speakers on the item overall. I'll begin that discussion, and when we get the result of the pending vote, I'll come back to you.
Thank you.
All right, once again, I remind all our speakers that there is a 2-minute limit in effect. All right, our first speaker is Margaret Heppelman, to be followed by Carol Zarilli. We're now speaking on the item overall. We will take a final vote ultimately tonight. And we're now speaking either in favor or against the item overall. Margaret Heppelman, to be followed by Carol Zarilli.
So I had actually signed up. This is Margaret Heppelman, D11. I had actually signed up to speak on reinstating the senior $25 fee. But as long as I have the floor, I'll just ask people to vote in favor of this ordinance overall. Thank you.
Thank you. Carol Zarilli, to be followed by Wynn McDaniel.
I pass.
Wynn McDaniel, to be followed by Beth McGillivray.
Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Moderator. Given all of the comments and the motions, I support this amendment. It's been in place for a short while. I think it's working well. I'm a frequent user of Holly Hill, and I support proceeding with this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Beth McGillivray, to be followed by Brian Rainey.
I spoke earlier. I'm still supporting. Thank you.
Brian Rainey, to be followed by Michael Spilo.
Brian Rainey passes.
Michael Spilo, to be followed by Dan Ozesmere. All right, Dan Ozesmere, who has a minute remaining, to be followed by Hector Arzina.
Dan Ojasmir, I urge us to vote to support the item 1. Thank you.
All right, Hector Arzino. He's here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. Good evening, everyone. I am voting against this item because I expected a far-reaching proposal from the Office of the First Selectman. We have been discussing the last two sessions, if we include the seniors, permits or not, things that in terms of economics are no material. Since the tipping fees were approved last year with a sunset clause, still we are not seeing substantial changes that addresses the MSW problems in Granite. With tipping fees, our volume of MSW remain the same. We still do not know what it is commercial and what it is residential. In the meantime, our haulers fees, at least in my case, went up over the last 2 years, 43%. Yes, the compost initiative is a good starting point. Still, a very low number of households are taking advantage of it. In Connecticut, in the meantime, we are running out of space in our only landfills, and one of our two incinerators will be closing soon, as it was announced. There are other municipalities that are taking advantage of the recently approved state grants to implement the use of other options. I don't know why Greenwich doesn't take advantage of this. There are legislative initiatives in Hartford that are considering state mandates in the management of our MSW. It will be great if we start planning for the future and present to the RTM a more resourceful proposal. Thank you.
All right, that was the last speaker on item 1 overall. I'm still waiting for the pending vote, so just bear with me. All right. We have the result of the vote on the L&R motion to amend section 9-5, paragraph 4, to raise the entry fee for non-permit holders. Those in favor, 50-5-0, opposed 147, abstaining 3. That item has failed. Mr. Basham.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Hopefully this exercise will be fairly simple. The Finance Committee proposes that in section 9-5, that we strike the last sentence of paragraph 4 and add the following language as paragraph 5. All other disposal fees shall apply as appropriate to any town residents entering the town disposal area via an annual permit or a single entry permit. The current language in the paragraph 4 in the ordinance suggests that all other disposal fees apply only to those residents entering using a single entry permit. This is a simple amendment which makes it clear that all residents entering Holly Hill using either a single entry visit permit or an annual permit are required to pay all appropriate disposal fees. The Assistant Town Attorney has confirmed that this language will accomplish this goal. I should say the language in paragraph 5 will in fact accomplish this goal. Thank you.
All right, the problem we have here is this amendment was not noticed to us to put up a sign-up sheet. So we have no sign-up sheet on this. I don't know if there's any opposition or not. So first of all, this motion being offered on behalf of Finance Committee does not require a second. You heard its description. Does anyone care to speak on this? Commissioner Siebert, do you have any comments on this?
No, we believe it's doing what finance is saying, trying just to bring clarity.
So you're in favor of this?
Yes.
Okay. Is there any other thoughts to be offered on this? If it's truly a consent item, I'll ask if we can adopt it upon unanimous consent. I just have no idea since we had no notice. Any other comments? All right. Is there any objection to this? Meaning if a single person wants a record vote, we will take a record vote. Is there anyone asking for a record vote, meaning objecting to adopting this upon unanimous consent? Okay.
Mr. Moderator?
Yes.
Brian Rainey, District 9. One of my members is asking for you to repeat the language.
All right. Currently, this is section 9-5, paragraph 4. The last sentence says all other disposal fees will apply as appropriate. But as written, it only that only applies to those who don't have a permit, who show up and pay the $10 fee. This takes that sentence out, but applies it to everyone, whether they have a permit or not. So strike the last sentence, the second sentence that is currently in that paragraph, and replace it with all other disposal fees shall apply as appropriate to any town resident entering the town disposal area via an annual permit or single entry permit. Any objection to adopting that upon unanimous consent? Commissioner Siebert is in favor. All right, hearing none, hearing no objection, that may be adopted upon unanimous consent. That now brings us to the item as amended tonight. We have heard all our speakers who signed up to speak on the item overall. Commissioner Siebert, do you have any final words that you want to offer?
No, thank you very much for everything
All right.
you've done tonight.
Well, the district chairs, please mark your voting cards. Item number 1 as amended, and please proceed to poll your delegation. We will provide a 5-minute voting period, and then we will continue with our next item, which will be item number 2. All right. So that vote on item 1 is still underway. I will bring it to you when we have it. That brings item number 2 before us. Andy Fox, Vice Chair of the GEMS Board, with that resolution.
Good evening. Resolved that the sum of $358,000 be and the same is hereby appropriated to be added to account number B 440-59560-22351, for GEM Station 4, as appeared in the call.
Thank you very much. Will a member please move the adoption of the resolution? The resolution on item 2 has been moved and seconded. Alexis Volgaris, Chair of our Health and Human Services Committee.
Good evening. Health and Human Services Committee met in person at the Greenwich High School Student Center to consider this item last Tuesday. Joining us were Tracy Scheiniger, the GEMS Executive Director, and Andy Fox, the GEMS Vice Chair, who has extensive experience in building and construction. The item before you this evening is a $358,000 interim appropriation for costs associated with rebuilding GEMS Station 4. In fiscal year 21-22 capital budget, the town budgeted $1.41 million for the project. The request for bid, RFB, was posted in August of 2021 and closed 1 month later in September 2021. And all 4 of the responsive bids received exceeded the budgeted amount of $1.4 million. For those of you unfamiliar with GEMS Station 4, it is a station located on King Street. And for the last 8 years, GEMS has been using an old FEMA trailer that was previously only rated to be used for 3 years. So the investment in a permanent structure for staff and the ambulances, which currently do not have a garage space in that location, is long overdue. On Columbus Day, the FEMA trailer was finally hauled away and the space is awaiting construction. I should note that GEMS is currently using a space out of Brunswick School to operate Station 4, and Brunswick is generously donating that space free of charge. The lowest bid submitted was by a firm called Epifano Builders. It came in at roughly $1.5 million, and the second lowest bid from La Rosa Building came in at roughly $1.6 million. The additional $358,000 would cover the shortfall from the original bid, $127,000 in the case of Epifano, as well as a 15% contingency, or about $230,000. If for some reason the deal with the lowest bidder falls through, then there's enough money to return to the second highest bidder without having to come back for yet another interim appropriation. I believe we heard that it costs about $650 a square foot to build the station, and that's because the building must be built to code and standards for an emergency response building. For example, the footings for the building needed to be able to withstand and meet earthquake standards. If you look at the 4 bids, the cost estimates for the site work line swings wildly from a low of $130,000 to a high of $353,000. And when asked by a committee member about that variation, Mr. Fox indicated that some builders put the money where they want to get the money, and they know that they will get money on the site work. Some of the things that are included in the site work category are pouring the slab, installing a new septic system, water system, a generator, wetlands plantings, and a raid garden. It should be noted that any unspent money from this interim would then be returned to the town. Supply chain problems are the primary reason for the inflated cost. As many of you know, prices for raw materials such as lumber, piping, roofing have all escalated since the budget for this item was developed in the winter and spring of 2020. Mr. Fox explained that GEMS hopes to have the station open and fully functional by July of 2022. As GEMS Station 4 is located on town property, Al Manelli, our Superintendent of Building and Construction and Maintenance, will oversee the construction of the project. Mr. Fox reports that the town has worked with Epifano builders in the past, most recently for the town about 10 years ago on Captain's Island, but they've also done projects at Brunswick, Greenwich Academy, and Eagle Hill. Finally, I did want to just remind everyone that GEMS is privately contributing roughly $500,000 to this project, about $300,000 to cover architectural and engineering drawings and furniture. I think it's called FFE or something like that, furniture, fixtures, and equipment. And in July, the town received a $200,000 check from GEMS. Our committee voted 10-0-0 with districts 3 and 5 absent to support this appropriation. Thank you.
Michael Basham with the report of our Finance Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I don't have much to add to Alexis's very detailed report, other than an issue was raised. The town is receiving approximately, or has received approximately $16 billion in COVID funds from the federal government. The question was raised, could this project be funded out of that in lieu of appropriating additional funds? It was explained that the funds themselves are subject to significant regulations proposed by the U.S. Treasury Department. The town is still learning what is qualified for reimbursement for those funds. So it's not clear if it would be eligible for reimbursement at this particular time. Subsequently, I've been able to find out, I think it's highly unlikely that that will happen. We did vote 11-1-0 in favor. District 5 voted no due to concerns about the actual cost of the gym station.
I hope one of our committees will just answer this question. Since GEMS is not a town entity, I assume there'll be a lease after this is built and before they move in?
Mr. Moderator, I believe this was land that was purchased several years ago, potentially for a combined GEMS fire station location. I think subsequent to that purchase, it was determined that the site was not suitable.
Mr. Basham, I understand the town owns the property.
Okay.
I'm just saying, I assume it will then enter into a lease with this private entity for them to move in. I assume that would have to be the case. All right, Mr. Bergweger, do you have a report?
Yes, we considered this on Monday when Mr. Fox was there to help us, and the moderator pro tem Bulgaris has fully covered everything we discussed, and our vote on legal order was 11-0-0, and on the merits was 11-0-0.
Thank you. Michael Spilo with the Public Works Committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. We did ask Mr. Manelli for details on the lease. He did not have that available at our meeting. And the only other thing I would add is that Mr. Manelli indicated that unlike some other town facilities that we lease out, the town is responsible for utilities, snow removal, and landscaping. So heat, electric, water, snow removal, landscaping for the property. We voted on the item 1100 with District 9 absent.
Thank you. Richard Newman with the Town Services Committee report.
Town Services met last Tuesday, the 18th, via Zoom. All districts were present, discussed the item. Again, Ms. Volgaris has covered most of what we talked about. We did notice, we saw that the bids ranged from 1.54 million all the way up to 2.338 million. We did also say that GEM's contribution of 530,000 brings our total cost down to about $1 million. There was some discussion in the past that this could be a prefab building, but this will be stick built. It was pointed out that the people who do the prefab are so backed up that they declined to bid on this job. This cost does include the Connecticut prevailing wage rules. Our math came up a little bit lower of a $625 per square foot, but we were told by Mr. Manelli that's within the similar construction in the town, especially since it does include a new well, septic driveway, rain garden, and a standby generator. Should be completed in 8 to 9 months, and Town Services voted 12-0-0.
Thank you. All right, we did have a person sign up to speak, Mr. Didakis, and Mr. Fox, if you care to speak, I'll offer you that opportunity. Mr. Ed Didakis.
I'll pass, Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Fox, you care to speak?
No, I could answer the question on the lease.
That's all right. All right, thank you. All right, will the district tabulators please mark your voting cards, item number 2, and proceed to pull your delegation. We will provide the 5 minutes voting period. All right, thank you. That vote is still in progress. We will now take up item number 3. And our first selectman, Fred Camillo, has that resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Good evening, members of the RTM and guests. Whereas the Stephen and Alexandra Cohen Foundation Incorporated wishes to make a gift of $5 million to the town to support the replacement construction of the Eastern Granite Civic Center located at 90 Harding Road in Old Greenwich, Connecticut, 06870, the foundation agrees to pay the gift in 4 installment payments according to the payment schedule in the proposed agreement. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the RTM accepts the gift from the foundation of $5 million to be applied for the purposes of replacing the Eastern Greenwich Civic Center, and further resolved that the RTM authorizes the first selectman to execute the proposed agreement required to accept said gift, and further resolved the RTM acknowledges with gratitude this gift by naming the Eastern Granite Civic Center, the Cohen Eastern Granite Civic Center, as specified in the proposed agreement. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you. Will a member please move the adoption of the resolution? Resolution on item 3 has been moved and seconded. Michael Basham, Chair of our Finance Committee, with that report.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. We met last Monday and we had Joe Siciliano of Parks and Rec and Amina Ahmad, Assistant Town Attorney, to present to us. The proposed $5 million gift, questions were raised about the precedent associated with naming a facility after a private donor. Mr. Ahmad mentioned that in 2001, the Benheim family had donated $2.5 million to facilitate the completion of the Western Greenwich Civic Center, now the Benheim Civic Center, and that so there was a prior precedent for accepting gifts of this nature. There was a question raised as to why the size of the gift was $5 million relative to the cost of the building. Why should this allow for the full naming rights? Again, the precedent, apparently the Benheim Center was approximately, the gift was approximately 1/3 of the total cost, and the The number for this is approximately the same amount. Mr. Siciliano went on to mention that these gifts are relatively infrequent, particularly of this size, and that the town really has no formal rules or process other than just to accept the gift and apply it as appropriate. The committee voted 11-0-1 to accept the $5 million gift from the Cohen Foundation. District 8 abstained due to the lack of formal town process in regards to vetting donors and accepting gifts for town buildings.
Thank you. Kip Bergweger with the Legislative and Rules report.
Legislative and Rules took up this matter Monday night. All districts except District 2 present. We had Parks Department Director Joseph Siciliano present the item, and Ahmad, the Assistant Town Attorney, who's there to help us as well. We were told that this item goes back approximately 18 months. Early on in the process, Mrs. Siciliano and First Selectman Fred Camillo met to discuss with the Cohen Foundation a donation in support of the Eastern Granite Civic Center replacement project. Mr. Siciliano noted that, as mentioned before, there was precedent for naming a facility in recognition of the donation when the Western Granite Civic Center became the Blenheim Western Civic Center. There was RTM approval of that agreement. However, the agreement in that case was acknowledged to be less stringent concerning the naming requirements than the agreement associated with this item. It was discussed that while this is a welcome and generous offer of $5 million toward the construction of the Eastern Granite Civic Center, the agreement appears to condition the gift on some ambiguous terms. Members were concerned about ill-defined language in the agreement concerning the right of the donor foundation to withdraw funding upon any pushback or negative attention on the naming rights set forth in the agreement. Members stated that if the donors are under the agreement able to withdraw funding if the town brings their name into disrepute, and a reciprocal clause in favor of the town would be appropriate. It was also noted this agreement has no term limit and thus might be seen as a naming right granted in perpetuity. The suggestion was made that the agreement should potentially be modified to provide for the naming rights to extend only through the life of the building or until the occurrence of an event that destroyed or required the reconstruction of the building. It was further noted that if funding is withdrawn, the town should be able to remove the name. The agreement appears to be silent on that point. The committee was not advised on how a request to modify the agreement would be received by the donor foundation, nor was it advised whether delaying entry of the agreement to negotiate modifications would negatively impact the timing of funding. However, we had then learned that the BET has conditioned the funding of the project overall upon receipt of certain public private donations. The committee was asked whether the town will be able to do the annual reports that are required by the agreement. And Director Siciliano said he knew that the construction manager will be on top and will be able to keep the required records and generate the reports. Attorney Ahmad and the Director Siciliano agreed to take into account the questions and concerns expressed by the committee and to raise them with the First Selectman and the town administrator in order to speak with the donor foundation in order to move this forward. A motion was made and passed to postpone this item to the December RTM meeting. The motion to postpone was passed by a vote of 9-0, with districts 1 and 7 voting no.
Thank you. I will come back to you after we have heard all of the reports. Catherine LaBalbo, Chair of our Parks and Recreation Committee.
Good evening, Mr. Moderator, members of the RTM. The Park and Rec Committee met at Greenwich High School last Tuesday evening to take up the item before us, the donation of $5 million to Eastern Greenwich Civic Center. We were joined by Joe Siciliano, Director of Park and Recs, and Amina Ahmad. It was talked about the path of the project, status updates, and working through and with town departments for all the approvals that have been put in place for this project, as well as a brief discussion of the funding conditions from the BET, conditioning the release of public funds on a substantial amount of private fundraising. There was a discussion of LNRs possibly bringing some amendments, but we did not have that information before us at the time. It was noted that we have accepted or acquired a number of gifts of land and civic buildings from other barons of industry, notably Robert M. Bruce, his 100 acres and mansions, a textile merchant, which you now know as the Bruce Museum. The Havermeyer building, which houses the Board of Education, which previously was an elementary school and then a high school. And Mr. Havermeyer was a sugar merchant. He also donated to the creation of Old Greenwich School, which was built in 1902. And then, of course, it also came up, the Bentheim Western Civic Center, $2.5 million donation. The vote was ultimately 8-0-2 with 2 abstentions, notably District 8 and District 6, in which the Civic Center, the district in which the Civic Center is or is planned to be. They did not want to refuse the contribution, but did have some suggestions about a naming policy as we move forward with more public-private partnerships.
All right, thank you. Before I call on Mr. Spilo for the last report, I do have the result of the vote on the GEMS appropriation. Those in favor, 192, opposed 2, abstaining 0. That item is carried. Michael Spilo with the Public Works Committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The Public Works Committee met on Monday to discuss this item, among others, and one of the Public Works alternates made a motion to remove the provision for naming from the item. The reasons were primarily that there was no process in place for naming. In our discussion, we noted that several buildings and other structures were named after donors. For example, Mr. Bruce of the Park and Museum fame was a cotton and textile magnate in the 1800s. Mr. Julian Curtis was president of the Spalding Goods Company. And of course, the Bentheim Western Greenwich Civic Center is named for a family in manufacturing. The motion to delete the naming provision failed 0-10-1 with District 10 abstaining. First Selectman spoke to us about the importance of the public-private partnerships in keeping our town taxes low and in moving this particularly long overdue project forward. Mr. Camillo said that the donation was over a year in the making following extensive discussions, and he felt it would be a grave error to delay this pending any further process. Mr. Camillo indicated this donation was more than twice the next largest donation ever made for a town building. Our committee also noted that building name gifts are often for less than the value of the building and often at lower percentages than a gift before us. For example, a $22 million building at Sacred Heart University was named for $5 million, and a $25 million football stadium at Yukon Stores was recently named for $2.5 million. The item as it appears passed 11-0-0.
Thank you. Mr. Bergweger, you have a motion.
Yes, the Legislative and Rules Committee moves to postpone item 3 until the next regularly scheduled meeting in December.
All right, that motion postpone is now before us. We do have a sign-up list. Once again, I remind all that there is a 2-minute limit in effect. Our first speaker is Brian Rainey, to be followed by Michael Spilo.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Brian Rainey. I'm in favor of postponing in the hopes that Mr. Camillo and the town side can make some changes to the agreement as outlined by legislative and rules. There are some serious concerns about the current language in the agreement, and without some modification to that, I cannot support the item as it appears. Thank you.
All right, Michael Spilo to be followed by Catherine LaBalbo. All right, Catherine LaBalbo to be followed by Dan Ozesmere.
As I mentioned in the committee report, we did not yet know that there was going to be a motion to postpone put before us, and therefore our committee didn't take it up. I'm speaking as an individual. If I had understood that there would be a motion to postpone, I likely, I as an individual am supporting that. I think that it's our due diligence as a body. This is a contract. We often abide by a second read ruling. And that, we understand there has been a significant amount of work from our first selectman and our town attorney. And now it is our turn to go through it and become comfortable with it. I fully believe that we will be able to move this item forward in December and do not want to see it held up in the weeds in any way that would delay the contract. I think we need to be able to move forward with this project in December, and that by postponing to this evening, we'll have time to build that familiarity. Thank you.
Thank you. Dan Ozesmere to be followed by our first selectman.
Thank you. As a resident of Riverside, it's been over 2 decades since we've, tried to focus on the Eastern Granite Civic Center. I think it was originally viewed to, be privately funded. And I did participate, and many did look at the ability to raise private funds over 20 years ago. I think now we're in a situation where this is ready to go. I think there's lots of fair questions, but ultimately, I think a 2-month delay, this is not a 1-month delay, is not warranted. So I would urge you to vote against the motion to postpone. I would urge you to vote for the item. Thank you.
Thank you. First selectman, Camilla.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I would urge everybody to reject this motion to postpone. Normally, I would exercise, caution and say a second read is a good thing. But this is something that has been in the making for decades. And certainly, as you heard, for the last 1.5 years, we've been working on this. And the objections that I heard, things like a morals clause and so forth, I would agree going forward that, maybe having a town policy in place to discuss with potential donors, it's not a bad thing. But this is coming in at the last minute where some of the things that were mentioned, I don't think fit. This is a donor that lives in town. This is a donor that has their name on public buildings. They've been vetted before. One of the speakers really had a problem going back, back in history with the donor. So it wasn't prospective. So I would ask that this really sends a bad message, I believe. Any town in America would be really honored and grateful for something like this. And I surely believe that some of the people raising questions are grateful for this. But to me, a motion to postpone could be taken the wrong way. Again, this is a foundation that has their name on buildings in town. They're good citizens, and this, I believe, would be a mistake to postpone it. If we want to circle back and have a discussion going forward on a policy, I'm all for that, and I'm all for caution and second reads. But I just don't think it fits here, and I appreciate the time to discuss this and speak on it. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
All right, will the district chairs please mark your voting cards? Legislative and rules motion to postpone item 3 to our December meeting. If you are in favor of putting this off until December, you vote yes. If you want to vote on it tonight, you vote no on this motion to postpone. We will take 5 minutes. Good. All right. We don't have the final result. We're waiting on at least one more district, but this item is going to, this motion to postpone is going to fail. I will bring you the official result when we have it, but we can continue here. The We do have a speaker list for item 3, as it appears on the call. Ed Dodakis, to be followed by Michael Spilo.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, members of the town meeting. I want to first thank Fred Camillo for his leadership on this important private-public partnership, and also to thank Steve Cohen for his generosity. In Greenwich, we have had a long history of public-private partnerships, which has served our town well. Some of the donors want to be known, others do not. Using people's names to show appreciation has long been done. You've heard some of those familiar names today: the Bentheim Western Greenwich Civic Center. I'll add in the Florin Family Environmental Center, just to name a few in these 2 minutes I have. This gift is very similar to those. It is very appropriate. And quite frankly, we need more generous residents like Steve Cohen. We should all vote in favor of this with gratitude. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you. Michael Spilo, to be followed by Dan Ozesmere. Dan Ozesmere, to be followed by Hector Arzino.
I believe the points have been made. Thank you.
All right, I now have the result of the vote on the legislative and rules motion postpone item 3 to December. Those in favor, 53, opposed 139, abstaining 0. That motion has failed. Hector Arzino, speaking on item 3.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, and hi, everyone. The public-private partnerships had been on the table for quite a good amount of time, and I am in favor of a public-private partnership. We had plenty of time to put into place for everyone to comment and approve a set of rules and regulations for accepting private donations, participations in public works properties, and naming them. There is plenty of literature on the subject around us. I asked these questions at the committee levels, and the answer has been that there is nothing on this regard. Now we are putting the cart before the horse. The ancient Greeks used to call it historian proteron. When we put last is in fact put first. We are doing the things in the wrong order, and this usually it is not conducive to a good ending. I would like to put the horse before the cart to have proper rules and regulations, and I prefer having these things properly done, even if carries a delay in the process. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Camillo, any further words? Okay. All right. Will the district tabulators please mark your voting cards? Item number 3, and proceed to pull your delegation. If you are in favor of this gift, you vote yes. If you are opposed, you vote no. We will have a 5-minute voting period. All right. So that vote is still in progress. We will bring it to you as soon as we have it. Next item is item number 10, Michael Mason, Labor Relations Negotiator.
Good evening, Mr. Moderator, members and guests. Item 10 is before you tonight, which is a resolution for a labor contract agreement between the town of Greenwich and the local Teamsters number 456. This contract covers over 400 employees that provide services for us at Nathaniel Witherell, Parks and Rec, DPW, and the Board of Education. This contract was in arbitration. However, an agreement was made outside of arbitration, and you now have before you an agreement rather than an award. The contract expired back in 2019. It's way out of date. This successor agreement, which is a 4-year contract, will cover us until June 30th of 2024. The total estimated cost of this contract is $191 million and change. And the resolution is as it appears on your call tonight.
Thank you. Will a member please move the adoption of the resolution? Resolution on item 10 has been moved and seconded. Dan Ozis, Mayor, Chair of our Labor Contracts Committee.
Thank you, and I thank you, Mr. Mason, for presenting the item. The Labor Contracts Committee met on 2 separate days, October 8th and October 13th, to discuss the contract. We were joined by Mike Mason, Amina Ahmad from Town Legal to discuss the terms of the contract and the resolution language. In terms of the additional comments on the actual contract, Mike mentioned that this was 400 employees. I would note 97 are Board of Ed custodians and maintenance workers, 82 in the Department of Public Works, 86 in Parks and Rec, 104 in Nathaniel Witherall, and the remaining 35 in libraries, fleet, and sewer. It's important to note that with the Teamster contract, there's always been a tension between the town employees and the Nathaniel Witherall employees. The reason is town municipal employees are typically compared to municipal unions, whereas Nathaniel Witherall employees are typically compared to healthcare unions, which are not municipal. Granite is unique in that. Mike mentioned that this contract is more than 2 years in arrears. This is not, unfortunately, this is unfortunately not an uncommon issue for us, but this one is 28 months late. And this is due not only to, typical bargaining patterns, but the fact that we had COVID, meetings were not that frequent. We went into arbitration and then we came out of arbitration. And lastly, we had Al Cava, the original labor negotiator, leave. We had Emmett Hipson come in and he ultimately left. And now, we had the human resources head managing part of negotiations. In terms of the, I would say that Local 456, the Teamsters did ratify this contract on September 27th of 2021. The GWI in the first year is 1.5, then 1.5, 225 and 225. The Nathaniel Witherall employees that are LPNs and CNAs, the nurses, for the first 2 years, instead of a wage or GWI increase, did accept lump sum bonuses of 175. So they got, instead of 1.5, they got 175 as a bonus, but that did not go into their pensionable and long-term wages. The healthcare share did increase. As you know, the LCC has been focused on the percentage that the employees pay in healthcare. That did go from 10% to 14% throughout the contract. That's a good move. That's a good thing. But we would note that the recent GOSA contract, we got to 21%. And all town unions are still below, local benchmarks and Connecticut benchmarks. So healthcare is an issue we need to focus on. With all the costs involved, the average cost of contract increase is 2.58%. So everyone can benchmark that. Last fall, we agreed 3 contracts with town unions. The increases were 2.54, 2.74, and 2.78. So 2.58 is on the lower side of those other 3 contracts. Then recently we agreed GOSA, which was a 2.96%, which was higher. So 2.58% is definitely on the low side versus others. The town did achieve some improved language around sick leave and premium holiday pay, particularly at Nathaniel Witherall. That was a very significant issue, as overtime has been a problem throughout the union, and particularly at Nathaniel Witherall. The LCC did discuss this, and ultimately there were a few key issues. We talked about the healthcare. There were concerns that in the previous Teamster arbitration, which was in 2016, that the town argued, and the BOC and the RTM, And then also the arbitrators argued that there were some issues, some extra benefits that this union had that, the BOC wanted to address in 2016. Those were the 401k supplemental is frankly the biggest, and that is $2 million in this contract. So it's a significant amount. That was not addressed. And also the Teamsters have a 35-hour work week before they get overtime, whereas, the benchmarks throughout Connecticut are 40 hours. That at the margin does increase the cost and is not justified based upon other unions. Lastly, the LCC was concerned about the lack of benchmarking information. In terms of the votes, the committee took 2 votes. Actually, I'm sorry, 3 votes. One was a Scribner's error to amend the resolution, the resolve language and explanos to include the full cost of contract. And that language has been provided to the moderator. For you to understand, it basically says that the cost of contract language did not include benefits in the explanos, and we amended it to include the full cost of contract of 2.58% average for the 4 years. The committee also voted 5-2 to postpone indefinitely. Those against postponing indefinitely felt that the contract should be rejected due to the lack of benchmarking and no concessions on the supplemental 401k and the 35-hour work week. The committee then voted on the merits, and that vote was 6-1 in favor of the item, which would be to reject the contract. Again, this item is worded as rejects. So ultimately, the committee did vote 6-1 in favor of the item on the merits, assuming postponement definitely does not pass. And the dissenting member felt that the risks of arbitration were high, and our town professionals had argued for us to accept the contract. Thank you.
Thank you. Kimberly Blank with the report of our Education Committee. Jennifer Freitag, Vice Chair of Education.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Moderator. Good evening, everyone. Your Education Committee met on Monday, October 18th via Zoom to consider item 10, and all districts were present. Item 10, as you've heard, is the Teamsters Local 456 Collective Bargaining Agreement with the Town of Greenwich, covering the period fiscal year 2020 to 2023. The agreement covers 404 employees from 4 town departments, including 97 custodial and maintenance workers employed by the Board of Education. Dan Ozismer, Chair of the Labor Contracts Committee, and Michael Mason, the town's labor negotiator, presented this item to us. We also heard from Peter Bernstein, Chairman of the Board of Education. As you've heard, the collective bargaining agreement between the town and the Teamsters expired on June 30th, 2019. Negotiations for a successor agreement began in January 2020, but the parties reached an impasse in November 2020, leading to the creation of a state arbitration team. During arbitration, the proposed successor agreement before us was reached. It's important to note that the agreement was negotiated by the parties and it is not an arbitration award. As you've heard, the agreement provides for general wage increases of 1.5% for the first 2 years and 2.25% for the remaining 2 years. It also provides for employee contributions to healthcare rising from 10% to 14% over the 4-year period. Favorable to the Board of Education is a provision in the agreement that any custodian or mechanic who calls out sick the day before or after a pre-scheduled vacation or personal day will be charged a vacation day for the call out. The total cost of the agreement is $183 million, representing 10.34% increase over 4 years, or an average annual increase of 2.58%. Mr. Mason observed that an agreement that is 28 months out of date is unusual and presents unique issues, but he noted that the Board of Education's budgets have accounted for funding anticipated labor settlements over the years, and so the money is there to cover the costs of the agreement without impacting the Board of Education's budget or the services it wishes to provide to the district students. He also stated that the First Selectman did not wish to incur the expense of arbitration, which the presenters agreed generally costs $8,000 to $10,000 per day for an average total expense of about $60,000. Mr. Mason also emphasized that the average arbitrated wage increase is 2.25%, which is less favorable than the 1.5% contained in the agreement for the first 2 years. As a committee, we discussed our 3 options to act on the agreement, which are 1, to vote in favor of the agreement, which would be a vote against the item, 2, to vote to reject the agreement, which would be a vote in favor of the item, or 3, to vote on a motion to postpone the item indefinitely, which would result in the agreement going forward without an endorsement from the RTM. Mr. Mason stated that it was imperative that if the RTM were to reject the agreement, that he be given very clear and definite terms that the RTM is seeking from further negotiations or arbitration. Mr. Bernstein stated that he was made aware of the agreement and how it came to be only when this item was placed on the call for this month's meeting, and therefore the Board of Education did not take it up. Mr. Mason, Ozismer, and Bernstein all agreed that the process of negotiating labor contracts such as this one must be improved going forward, with all stakeholders participating in the process from the beginning. Our committee took 2 votes related to this item. The first was on a motion to postpone the item indefinitely. The motion to postpone indefinitely passed 9-3-0. Districts 4, 9, and 11 voted no because they would like RTM members to be able to show their approval or disapproval of a contract. The second vote was on the merits of the item as it appears on the call. The item failed 1-10-1. District 4 rejected the agreement, declining to state his reasons, and District 11 abstained, stating that he was weighing the pros and cons of arbitration against the expensive terms of the agreement. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael Basham with the Finance Committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Brooks Harris and I, who are Vice Chair and Secretary respectively of the Labor Contracts Committee, presented the contract to the Finance Committee. We noted that the contract terms were agreed to by the town and the union. It was not via arbitration. We went on to, again, repeat that if the RTM rejects the contract, we might end up with a higher cost of contract than the existing agreement. The committee was informed that this usually results because one of the critical considerations of arbitrators in reviewing these, providing for awards under arbitration is one of the critical elements of consideration is the ability of the town to pay, which always weighs heavily against our town in these arbitration decisions. The committee voted 12-0-0 to postpone consideration of the contract indefinitely. We actually did not vote on the item as presented on the call. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Before calling on our next speaker, I do have the result of the vote on the acceptance of the $5 million gift for Eastern Greenwich Civic Center. Those in favor, 164, opposed 18, abstaining 9. Item 3 has carried. All right, Catherine LaBabo with the report of our Parks and Recreation Committee.
Good evening again. So again, we met on Tuesday night at Greenwich High School. We had such a wonderful time. It got very late in the evening. Mr. Mason joined us and presented the item, noting he was not part of the negotiations as they did occur prior to him assuming his role, his current role with the town. The contract was beneficial to the town in a number of ways, including the modest increase in salary over the entire term of the contract of 2.58 average, an increase to employee expenses with an increased contribution to their healthcare plan of a total of 3% over the entire contract, and an adjustment of how overtime rate is calculated, again, in favor of the town. A number of salaries for this group are below the Connecticut household median income and well below the per capita income of town residents. Discussion around the motion to postpone occurred, highlighting the trend of thought in recent years. The delegates may not want to consider a positive vote on a contract if there was hesitancy. The committee did not make and second a motion at that evening, but we are expecting one to come from either BOC or Finance. Districts 1, 3, and 8 voted not to reject the contract. The remaining members abstained with the idea of an indefinite postpone. The vote was 0-3-7. Thank you.
Michael Spilo with the report of our Public Works Committee.
Your Public Works Committee voted 12-0-0 to postpone this item. We didn't take a vote on the item as it appears.
And Lucia Jansen with the Budget Overview Committee report.
Good evening. The BOC did take up this item, as is our tradition, to take up labor contracts. I would like to reiterate slowly how large this contract is, because we say these numbers and it really is quite encompassing. So I heard 180, I thought it said 182 on the call, but it's 190 million, 190 million, 400 employees. So when we think about the budget, we really are largely talking about these labor contracts. That's why your Budget Overview Committee takes up these items. So we were highly disappointed from a process point of view. You heard our frustration with the GOSA contract, with the little information that was presented. With this contract, we had even less. So we had no peer benchmarking information to justify any of these outcomes. And that is very, very frustrating. When we go to arbitration, just to remind you, it is a large part of the brief, which is to say, how are the peers? How are we comparing? Are we attracting and retaining at the same level as other towns? Everyone has the same arbitration process here in Connecticut, so we're all living under the same conditions. We hear a lot about this ability to pay. I believe Westport, Wilton, all of our other towns, Ridgefield, Darien, they all have the same contractual issue here of ability to pay. It is incumbent upon a professional presentation on the town to gather this information, gather these facts, and really come in justifying our point of view so that we can have really a data-to-data kind of discussion on these things. That's how the unions come in presented. They know what's happening on those outcomes across all their municipalities. We encourage, and we have been saying this over and over again, we need to have this peer benchmarking. We were frustrated with the 34-hour work week. We were frustrated with the 401k supplemental. And just to remind you, our friends here, we put everything in writing. We're not verbal anymore. The BOC has been very clear. We have not had any ambiguity in what we're looking for. When we went to arbitration with this union, in fact, in 50 plus years, it was one of the few, if not a couple, times that the RTM outright rejected an arbitrated agreement. And we know how that came out. It was an amazing impact when that contract came back from arbitration. So we looked at the inflation, how this compared to inflation. We looked at the outcome as it related to other unions in our own town. The contract was higher, 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 and higher. So we did take a vote. The BOC, we decided to, oh, and by the way, I want to say one more thing, sorry, which is the patterning of this. An essential part of these union agreements is something called pattern bargaining. We've talked about this. So when we have these outcomes, this higher outcome on wages, it has a pattern effect to the other subsequent unions. So that's my last mention. It can work for us. It could also work against us. Okay, so with our frustration, we do want to just implore that we really need to see this peer benchmarking. And we voted on the merits of this first. So your committee, your BOC committee voted 0-9-2 on the merits. So we rejected this contract. Then we took a postpone indefinitely, as the Labor Contract Committee had done. And the vote was yes to postpone indefinitely. 4 of those, 7 were to reject, with 0 abstentions. Thank you.
Ms. Jansen, if I could just clarify, the language of item of item number 10 is to reject the agreement. I understand your committee voted in favor of that.
Correct.
Rejecting. Thank you. All right. Mr. Ozesmir, you have a motion to postpone indefinitely?
Yes, the LCC voted 5-2 to postpone indefinitely the item. Thank you.
All
The
right,
effect of
thank
that would be to let it go into effect 30 days from when it was submitted. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Discussion on the, that motion is currently before us. Discussion on the Labor Contracts Committee motion to postpone item 10 indefinitely. Brian Rainey.
Brian Rainey, Mr. Moderator. Just to be clear, I can go into the merits of the item itself, correct?
Yes, you can.
Okay. I would urge you to vote against the motion to postpone indefinitely and then to vote for the item as presented, which would reject the contract. My thinking here goes, if I may follow the thread from the BOC chair, contracts are a huge lever on our budget and therefore a huge lever on our mill rate and our taxes. I did a little research. The Teamster contract for fiscal years 2015 and 16, we ran over inflation by about $1.7 million. For the contract for 17 through 19, we ran $1.3 million over inflation. And that included a $1.7 million savings from a structural change to healthcare. That nets us at about $4.7 million before we start talking about this contract. Last year, inflation ran pretty hot. And that puts us at the town or inflation making out about $138,000 better so far in the first 2 years if this contract went into effect. So far for the previous decade, the contract has been above inflation by about $4.5 million. The next 2 years, this contract is slightly backloaded on total cost of contract, running over 3% each of those years. Inflation since 1990 has averaged about 2.45%. We'll see where it nets out this year. It seems to be running a little hotter, but over 3% both in both the tail years is higher than average. I think this is too rich. I pay my taxes out of my take home, and that's related to inflation. So I feel like this is just too rich. Total cost of contract is the primary measure of these things, and it's just too much. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you. All right, that was the only speaker signed up on the motion to postpone indefinitely. Before I put this to a vote, I simply want to make a comment. I continue to hear people throw up their hands and say they don't understand a motion to postpone indefinitely. So I'm going to try and explain it very briefly. We do not, under state law, we do not have an absolute right to reject any labor agreement, whether it's agreed between the parties or it's an arbitration. We have the right to reject in the first instance, but then it ultimately can be imposed on us despite our objection to it. And so when we consider these, there may be parts of an agreement that or an arbitration that we don't like, but we fear having something worse imposed on us. And for that reason, some people, rather than saying, let's approve this with parts that we disagree with, let's just simply take no action. And we know it will be imposed by operation of state law, but we will not have had to put our stamp of approval on it. And we don't want to reject it. So that is the reason for this. If you want to approve it, you have the right to do that tonight. You can vote against the motion to postpone indefinitely, and then you can vote against the rejection language. So that's the whole purpose of this. At this point, I will ask the district tabulators to mark their voting cards. Labor Contracts Committee motion to postpone item 10 indefinitely. So if you are in favor, the motion postpone indefinitely, if it passes, kills the item. We will have taken no official action on it, and this agreement will then take effect by operation of state law. So if you are in favor of that happening, you should vote yes on the motion to postpone indefinitely. If you want to take another vote on the item as it appears on the call tonight, you should vote no on the motion to postpone indefinitely. All right, we are going to need to await the result of this vote. So please expedite the voting. All right, we have the result of the vote on the motion to postpone item 10 indefinitely. Those in favor, 136, opposed 38, abstaining 3. That motion is carried. Final item to come before us, item number 11. Susan Fahey, Chair of District 11.
So I'm just going to read the, you want me to read the old resolution or the substitute resolution first?
Just the substitute, whatever you're presenting for us to vote on tonight.
Okay, so D11 has a substitute resolution and it now reads, now therefore be resolved that it is a sense of the representative town meeting of the town of Greenwich that and the change is from, instead of first selectman, the Board of Selectmen should create a written policy that is now, written policy is now lowercase. I think you guys have a slide for this. For the
slides.
Board of Selectmen to use when approving all town art on the town of Greenwich public properties. This policy and the word written was added there, and process should be in place before approving any public art in the future.
All right, that being offered on behalf of District 11, it does not require a second and is now before us. Okay, we have the reports of the committees that considered this.
You want me to go first, right?
Oh, yes, thank you. District 11.
So obviously we never presented our report for September, so I'll give just a little quick background. District 11 took up the item 5 back then in September at our D11 meeting. We had a long and lively discussion about the acceptance of the original 25K in exchange for the Pollinator Pathway Group to come through our Greenwich Conservation Commission and erect a pollinator pathway mural on the intersection of Overlook and the Post Road. At our meeting, we had Myra Clockenbrick, a Greenwich resident who was part of the local committee for the pollinator pathway, explaining that they were an environmentally friendly group who wishes to make the generation aware of environmental issues. Concerns were raised in our district that were about the expression of art being created on our town walls, buildings, and roadways. Some brought up the term of creeping muralization. One member stated that all art on public property should come before the RTM, and anyone paying for the outdoor lease or use of public property would fall under RTM oversight. This led to a discussion of how one of the former presidents of the library, who's now a D11 member, had seen some language they used at the library. We added that into some language we thought might be useful for the first selectman, which is that the community bulletin boards may not be used for personal, for profit, commercial, or partisan politics. Also, they may not be intended for forms of exercising free speech. We then discussed how we could help the town manage future decisions on public art, and the D11 sense of the meeting resolution was offered and seconded. That is the one in your explanos. So then after we had this meeting and we heard the reports from the Legislative and Rules, Public Works, Town Services, and Land Use, we decided to offer a substitute resolution that I just read you with the 3 corrections that we adopted, changing first selectman to the Board of Selectmen, lowering to lowercase public properties, and adding the word written before the second policy in the last sentence. That passed 21-0-0 with 2 members absent. We did consider the public works, and let me back up. We decided to do that to make tonight more streamlined and offer a substitute resolution with the many different amendments from all the different committees. We did consider the public works amendment to give the RTM approval of all art in all spaces. It was discussed if art should be under the RTM oversight. Anything that would be 5K or higher obviously would come under us. However, we did vote on anything from 0 to 5K, and that failed with a vote of 1 in favor, 18 against, and 2 abstaining. those were concerned that there would be difficulty of a 230-member body agreeing on what is art and whether or not we would want it in our town. Others felt it was the right of people in their district to actually have some say in the matter. Others felt the Art Council would handle that for us. I can offer anything else you need if you need me to say more. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Peter Berg with the Land Use Committee report.
Good evening again. So the Land Use Committee met last Monday night. Susan Fahey, District 11 Chair, joined the meeting to present her district's proposed sense of the meeting resolution. She explained that it arose out of the RTM's consideration of the Pollinator Pathway mural during the September RTM meeting, and that the intention was to urge the Office of First Selectman to develop a policy for accepting public art that would define how a particular artwork is selected and approved, regardless of whether it is a gift, commission, or acquisition. She noted that the request is not for a gift acceptance policy, which might cover donations as well. Discussion touched on the role of the Greenwich Arts Council in previous acceptance of public art, whether the sense of the meeting resolution had enough teeth, and the non-binding nature of the sense of the meeting resolution, whether the policy should return to the RTM for approval, how a policy would apply to Board of Ed properties, temporary displays of art, like proposed projections in the I-95 underpasses and outside the senior center, seasonal decorations, and more. It was noted that legislative and rules may amend the sense of the meeting resolution to say that the policy should come before the RTM for approval, and that the town administrator has developed a draft policy that will likely move forward. The Land Use Committee voted 8 in favor, 3 opposed. In favor of the item as it appears on the call, Districts 2, 6, and 7 voted no. District 2 felt that the policy is in process and the sense of the meeting resolution is therefore not necessary. District 6 felt that the sense of the meeting resolution is too vague and they would prefer to wait to see the policy currently being developed. District 10 respected the intent but felt the sense of the meeting resolution is not clear enough. Again, our vote was 8 in favor, 3 opposed.
Bergweger with the Legislative and Rules report.
We met again on Monday. We had Adam Brodsky from District 11 who gave us a description of the work that the district did in adopting this, but he wasn't not the official presenter. He did note that it derived from the Pollinator mural, and the district's resolution to ask the selectmen to craft a policy to govern the process of gift acceptance. Some members of the committee opine that a policy governing art installations is a slippery slope. It's unclear whether it is within the RTM's purview to determine this policy or whether it should be assigned to the executive branch. The people in their committee believe there was a connection between items 11 and 3, and there appears to be a need to establish art and gift policies in town, and both should be crafted separately. It was noted that assistance on developing the art policy or implementing it could come from the Greenwich Arts Council. It was also noted that this new policy may be implemented again, since another policy may soon be proposed in Byram. At that point, we agreed on an amendment to the resolution, which is very similar, although not exactly the same as the substitute resolution. And we voted on that. Legal order was 11-0-0, and the merits, it was 10-1-0. District 9 voting no.
All right, are you going to have anything to amend here? A motion to amend the substitute?
No, I think that the wording is almost exactly the same.
Okay, thank you. Richard Newman with the report of our Town Services Committee.
Good evening again. Town Services discussed the District 11 SOMR. I represented District 11 with full disclosure to the committee that I had originally voted against the item, but had changed my mind after hearing our first selectman say in last month's meeting that there was no current process in place to accept art gifts. I did ask Susan Fahey if she wanted to represent us, but she agreed that I could. We were aware of other committees' proposed amendments. We discussed those amendments. We've discussed the pros and cons of RTM overseeing art for the town, or I should say pros and cons of RTM overseeing art for the town was debated. An amendment was brought from Town Services, proposed and seconded. The basis of the amendment was we wanted the Board of Selectmen to bring their process back to the RTM for discussion before implementing. We debated if the RTM had any say in developing procedures of town departments or boards. After much editing, we voted on the following amendment. The RTM requests the Board of Selectmen bring the written policy to the RTM. The vote was 8 in favor, 4 against, with District 3, 5, 9, and 11 against. We then voted on the item as amended, 6, 1, 5, with Districts 3 voting no, Districts 5, 9, 10, 11, and 12 abstained, wanting to see how the outcome was tonight of the amendments. I will defer to the moderator if our motion is in order. If yes, I will bring it back at the proper time.
All right, Michael Spilo with the Public Works Committee report. I'll answer that question later.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Public Works took up discussion of the SOMR, and we all agreed that a policy is required. We had Select Person Oberlander on the call, and she indicated that she felt there would be no objection at the Board of Selectmen to the concept of creating a written policy. We then made a motion and seconded that to request that the RTM have the final approval of the art that's placed on public property, regardless of the cost or value of the art. In our discussion, we clarified that this change was not directed at the rest of the policy and that the creation of the policy was up to the selectmen. The proposed language was strictly directed at requesting that final approval of the art of art installations in or on or using public spaces would be with the RTM in a manner similar to approval of gifts. The general idea being that the RTM represented the public and the public should have final say on how public property was used and what artworks were placed on such public property. Some indicated that we should defer to the Greenwich Arts Council or the Bruce Museum with respect to the art, but others felt that public opinion mattered even if sophisticated art aficionados felt something was aesthetically appealing. While the RTM has been contentious and partisan over the last few years, we represent people even in that. Our vote was 11-0-0 in favor of this. District 10 was absent.
All right, Mr. Newman, you asked if, so as I understand it, the Town Services Committee is moving to amend by adding a sentence that says the RTM requests the Board of Selectmen bring the written policy to the RTM. And you asked if that is in order. My view of a sense of the meeting resolution, which is legally non-binding, is that anything would be in order, which is also the reason why I recommend against us considering these things. They're, in my view, often voted on because they're legally non-binding, and are we really getting an accurate measure of the sense of the body? So you can put anything in this you want. So if you want to offer a motion, I recognize you for that purpose.
Okay, then I will stick with my committee's vote, and we will add that motion, that line to the end. The RTM requests the Board of Selectmen brings the written policy to the RTM.
All right, so we're gonna have to take a record vote on this. Town services is, unless this might be adopted upon unanimous consent. Is there any objection to amending item 11 to add that sentence? The RTM requests the Board of Selectmen bring the written policy to the RTM. Is there any objection to adding that?
Mr. Moderator, Brian Rainey, I will object to that.
All right.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Sorry.
All right, no, hang on. That's uncalled for. Anyone has a right to object without criticism. We'll take a vote. Will the district tabulators please mark your voting cards? Town services, motion to amend item 11 and proceed. And so this is what we are voting on. If you want to add, now we're not voting on item 11 yet. We're simply deciding whether we will amend it before a final vote to add that the RTM requests the Board of Selectmen to bring the written policy that is developed to the RTM. If you are in favor of that language being added, you vote yes. If you are opposed, you vote no. I ask that our district tabulators please expedite the voting to the extent possible. All right, we have to give a period of time. We don't need the result of this because we have another motion to amend to take up. All right, we are still awaiting the result of the vote on that motion to amend, but we will continue. Public Works, do I understand you're intending to actually offer this?
Yes.
Okay.
So I don't see how I have any choice, even if I wanted not to. We took a vote. Public Works offers a motion, the RTM shall have, to add the language, the RTM shall have final approval of all such public art to the end of the summer. We voted 11-0-0.
All right, Mr. Spilo did not ask me if that was in order. My answer, for the same reason, would be it is, but if this then came back to us for approval, that would be a real question, whether such a request for RTM approval was in legal order. But in this form, anything goes. All right, we do have speakers on this, Mr. Spilo. You were signed up first, to be followed by Scott Kalb. Care to say anything further? All right, Scott Kalb. Speaking on the Public Works motion to amend by saying that the RTM shall have final approval of all such public art.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. My name is Scott Kalb, and in my view, I believe the RTM should not be involved in second-guessing decision-making for public art. I don't think we have the proper expertise to do so. I think we should let an appropriate committee of representatives or experts as designated by our policy to make such decisions. I just don't think politics should enter into discussions about public art. I do support the idea of having a policy, but I don't think it's the place of the RTM to be approving art installations or even to be necessarily weighing in on that policy. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. No one else has signed up to speak.
Mr. Moderator, can I say something?
Who is speaking?
My video's off because they keep turning it off. It's Susan Fahey.
All right, Susan Fahey.
So we took this up in our meeting and we talked about it for a while. And I think that the issue really is if there's a policy in place, and to Mr. Kalb's point, if there is a group that the Board of Selectmen put in place and we have the Art Council, having 230 members vote on any one piece of art is going to be very difficult. It was brought up at the land use meeting, which I thought was very thoughtful by one of the districts, that there's a piece of art that's a horse in Bruce Park that now somebody doesn't like. Somebody's always not going to like a piece of art. It's the 230 of us can rarely agree on something, let alone something as broad as art. So I think adding that, although I understand the intention, is really not something that's going to be fruitful for us. And I don't think it's something that we should be deliberating within the RTM. Thank you.
All right. Now, normally, when I ask about any objections, it's to adopt something by unanimous consent. My thought would be, could we reject this by unanimous consent? Is there anyone who actually wants to vote in favor of this? Will the district please mark your district tabulators, please mark your voting cards. Public Works motion to amend item 11 and proceed to poll your delegation. Now we will have to await the result of the pending votes before we could take up a final vote on item 11. All right, 5 minutes has expired. Jude Collins, district tabulator for District 10, reminds me that even though we need to await the result of the vote, we still do have a 5-minute limit within which the votes have to be submitted. So time is up. All district tabulators need to submit their cards, regardless of whether you've heard from all of your members. All right, because we have to move along.
Do all that you can.
All right. We have the result of the vote on the town services motion to amend item 11. This was to request that the Board of Selectmen bring the policy back to the RTM. Those in favor, 111, opposed 43, abstaining 4. That motion to amend has carried. So we are now awaiting the result of the vote on the Public Works motion to have the RTM approve all public art. And then when we have that, we will proceed to vote on item 11 as amended. All cards should be in. All right, that vote is still being tabulated, but it is clear that it will fail. That Public Works motion to amend will fail. So will the district tabulators please mark your voting cards? Item 11 as amended. If you are in favor of this sense of the meeting resolution, you vote yes. If you are opposed, you vote no. We have 5 minutes to get the cards in. Mr. Oka, do I understand you are trying to get our attention? I thought the panelists.
Yes, I was. There were members of my district who did not hear the summation of what the last motion was and were unsure what we were voting on.
All right. There is still being tabulated a vote on the Public Works motion to amend by requiring the RTM to approve any art in on public property. I'm telling you, I don't have the final vote, but looking at what we do have, it will fail. So the only motion that the only motion to amend that was approved was the town services motion, and we are now voting on the item as amended. So the substitute resolution with the added language requesting the Board of Selectmen to bring whatever policy is developed to the RTM. This will be our final vote tonight. If you are in favor of item 11 as amended, you vote yes. If you are opposed to it and want to reject this sense of the meeting resolution, you vote no. I am awaiting the final tally, but this is our last vote. Music is over for the evening. I want to thank those who appeared in person here at Central Middle School. I wish everyone good luck in the election next week. All right, we have the result of the vote on item 11 as amended. Those in favor, 115, opposed 31, abstaining 3. Item 11 as amended has carried. That being the final business to come before us tonight, this meeting stands adjourned. Thank you all for coming. Good luck next week.